Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Usmaparang Saparitajavacharya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your attendance as we continue to cover Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, verses 18 to 24, the passing away of Bhishmadev. Om Jnanatime Vandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasme Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Thakara Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Mastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Piyusha Sarva Vedeka Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokai Triprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kalidando Didatitya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all Vedas, O you are enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophic conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O life breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pathaya Prema Varshashavayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you one attains transcendental bliss. For your syllables rain pure love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madekabando Mat Sangye Mad Guru Man Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Madananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Asadu sadhu tadai natini chochataraka hanamum chakada chinmam premna ritkatyo spura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give us saintliness to unsaint, O uplifted very fallen, please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest Mahatma Tod, accompanying pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Janmadhyasya Yatonvayaditarata, Charte Swapigna Swarat, Tene Brahmaidaya Adikavaye Muyakti Yatsuraya, Tejo Vari Mritam Yatha Vinimayo, Yatrat Sargom Nisha, Damna Swena Sada Nirastakokam, Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. As one is bewildered by illusory representation of water, seen in fire, land, seen on water, only because of him. To the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual or unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanalpaisha Sabya Kalavasmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagyo Padrada. Learned one in this iron age of Kali, many but short lives, they are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayam Namaskritya Narachevam Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of God Narayan, and to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and the Mother Saraswati, goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasa, the author. Savai Pumsa Parodharmo Yato Bhaktira Dokshaje Ahitukiya Pratyata Yatma Suprasidati, the supreme occupation dharma of all humanities, thereby which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted, completely satisfied. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayatya Suvairagyam Yanam Chayad Haitukam. By rendering devotional service under the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causes, knowledge, and detachment from the world. Vedanti tattavidas tattvam yachknanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learned transcendental who know the absolute truth, called as non-dual substance, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Shri Shri Shroshadhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatseva Vipre Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the message of Vasudeva. Shrinutam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ryadantastoya Badrani Vidunati Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, personal to God, who is Paramatma, supersoul in everyone's heart and a benefactor, truthful devotee, cleanses desire from material enjoyment. From the heart of devotee who has developed the urge to hear messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nasta Prayasha Badreshu Nitam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatottama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and running of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome in the hearts almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise or transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna, and welcome again to all the devotees. Let us cover some feedback, some points that you can remember from last week's verses 12 to 17, chapter 9. Anything you took home, anything you found interesting, anything you read in the purport that you feel you need to remember, reinforce in your own consciousness and apply what you found amazing. Please share in the chat. Madhachana Siddhi says, we must tolerate and accept suffering caused by providence. And even though this is true, it's no doubt easier said than done, and Krishna will give us plenty of opportunities to apply it. If you see what's currently happening in Ukraine, Russia, it's unfortunate. Naturally, we don't desire these things, but as Prabhupada reminds us again and again and again, we are in this material world. And if you're in a material world, what do you expect? You do not expect Vaikuntha. You must expect Kunta. So when Kunta comes, don't be surprised. Don't say, oh, why is this happening? Oh, it's unfair. It's unfortunate. No. This is the nature of the material world. If it doesn't happen, be surprised. So as devotees, these situations remind us again and again and again of the urgency to be Krishna conscious, of the importance to prioritize our activities, to ensure that we put Krishna consciousness ahead of and in front of everything else, and that we understand our situation in this material world. And while we're doing that, we naturally tolerate the different inconveniences, as well as try our best to avoid it in the most practical way. At the same time, try to be serious about our journey to resolve it once and for all. In that way, by surrendering completely to Krishna and returning back to the spiritual world, we will not have these such situations and circumstances. And if Krishna desires, when we are perfect, to put us in situations, then we accept it as Krishna's loving reciprocation, and our pleasure to serve him in whatever way he chooses. Any other points? Mother Les says, Sri Krishna is time, the controller of all. We are all under its influence. No one in the material world escapes Krishna's control. And this is an extremely important point that Srila Prabhupada emphasized. Bhishma Dev is revealing as a Mahajan this fact and this truth. Everything is under the control of time. And because everything is under the control of time, as devotees, we also accept that whatever is happening is not happening haphazardly. It's happening under control. And it's happening under the control of Kala, time, and ultimately time is under the control of Krishna. Therefore, everything that is happening under Krishna's sanction, which then implies that whatever is happening, I accept every single situation that happens in my life as Krishna's sanction and doing through the force of time. And Prabhupada made it very clear, because of that understanding, we do not get disturbed. And especially because we cannot control the factor of time and providence, we do not get disturbed of those things that we cannot control or influence. We accept. So this ability to accept our circumstance, accept our situation, accept what comes according to providence, this is very, very important. The more you retaliate and the more you fight, the more you will implicate and complicate your life. We have to learn not to retaliate. When you retaliate, you basically implicate yourself in further karma. Our objective, our goal is to leave this place, not to stay further and further, not to increase our duration of lifetimes and lifetimes on this planet or in material creation. So because we want to escape, because we want to leave, we have to understand the secret. And the secret is do not counteract, do not react to situations, even though in some situations it may seem unfair, uncalled for, because we don't know the past. Still, we have to be very, very cautious. And this point will come up again when we discuss the life of Maharaj Parikshit. So we have to accept Krishna is in control, and he never lost control, and he will always be in control. Bhavana Prabhu says, center for this cause is the section we read is concerning inconceivable action of time. Even great control of the universe, Brahmaji, is also under the control of time, of that time. So happiness and unhappiness doesn't happen haphazardly. This section got me surrendered and inspired my attitude of dependence on the Lord. Yes. It's interesting how people think that just their current actions determines their situation, but it's not that. It's not the case. It's not a black and white, yes, whatever I do now, I get my result. No. You have such a complicated backlog of karma that it's even inconceivable for you to understand the amount of karma that's accumulated. And Krishna is administering that karma on a first come, first release basis, so to speak, both happiness and distress. And therefore, one will go through happiness and distress in this world that is already allocated by the time, providence, by Kala, by Krishna, by the force of time and karma. And everyone from Brahma right down to the insignificant ant is completely controlled by that force. And therefore the acharyas come to show us the way to become free from the control. So when one begins to surrender to Krishna, many things happen. And one thing that happens is you start to see things around you. As we mentioned, our perspective begins to change. And that perspective that allows us to change the way we see things also begins to influence our inner psyche. We become more peaceful because we are seeing things in a different light. And if anything allows us to increase our dependence on Krishna, that's a blessing. Madhacharya Siddhi says we should see everything through the eye tainted with love of Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you very much for your feedback. Let us proceed. So now we are covering verses 18 to 24. Bhishmadev glorifies Krishna, Krishna's position as the Supreme Lord. We heard last week how in the Mahabharata, Bhishmadev, Yudhishthira asks 6 questions in terms of who's the supreme, who should be worshipped, in what form they should be worshipped, etc. And Bhishmadev replies. And here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're going to find now Bhishmadev is really at that point of replying to Yudhishthira, because he's asking pertinent questions, and Bhishmadev is now going to reply who the Supreme Lord is. We also shared that we have to change our perspective. And we find here Bhishmadev, his initial focus on the battlefield of Kurukshetra was on the Pandavas, Yudhishthira, the Pandavas, and then Queen Kunti in terms of how they suffered. They suffered extensively. And with great compassion, he's feeling for them. And he's expert in terms of his current focus on them, understanding the past, understanding that now they are now safe, reasonably safe. Yudhishthira is now the emperor, and he's now very happy. At the same time, at this point now, he's moving his focus, his attention on Krishna. This moving and focusing on Krishna is an extremely important ability that we have to cultivate and create. It should become conditional. It should become our condition. Just like we call ourselves conditioned beings. We act in a certain way. After lifetimes and lifetimes, we become conditioned to act in a certain way. So we also want to condition ourselves to be Krishna conscious. This is what it means to be conscious of Krishna. And specifically, this is a very important activity at the time of death, which Bhishmadev is revealing through his own life. If one is not going to die today, then one can be distracted and one can waste time and one can be engrossed in other activities, and one will still given an opportunity to refocus. But at the time of death, you have no time to refocus. Your focus at the time of death, when you're leaving, is fixed and destined to give you the appropriate destination. It's like, if today is not the examination date, then I can say, okay, I'll study tomorrow. So you can postpone your studying. But if today is the examination date, I can't say, well, I'm going to postpone my examination. No, you're writing today. You have to write. You have to go sit and write. So the final time of death is like that. And Srila Prabhupada, all his purports, his whole lifestyle, the whole process, Krishna consciousness, is teaching us for this end, how to leave this world in a glorious way. And as Prabhupada would say, not to die like cats and dogs. So Bhishma Dev in today's verses is going to reveal how we have to be able to withdraw our senses like a tortoise withdraws its limbs, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, and be able to focus our senses on the most important personality, and that is Krishna. And because we don't know when we're going to die, then we have to be ready at all times. And that is why the importance of practicing Krishna consciousness nicely every single day, so that we are reasonably prepared. Text 18. Esha vai Bhagavan Shakshad Adyo Narayana Puman Mohan Mayaya Lokam Buddhascha Rati Vrishnishu. This Sri Krishna is no other than the inconceivable original personality of God. He is the first Narayan, the supreme enjoyer, but by bewildering us with his self-created energy, he is moving amongst the descendants of King Vishnu, just like one of us. So after consoling the Pandavas, Yudhishthir, Queen Kunti, now Bhishma Dev is now focusing his attention on Krishna. And the reason he's focusing his attention on Krishna is because he knows he has to leave this world. And now he is taking that initiative to attract the attention of Krishna. And he does that by also educating the Pandavas that the personality that is apparently one of you, the Vrishnis, is no other than the supreme personality of God. And Prabhupada in the purport says, first, he starts off with establishing the Vedic knowledge as the basis of acceptance of truth. The Vedic system of acquiring knowledge is the deductive process. The Vedic knowledge is received perfectly by disciplic succession from authorities. Such knowledge is never dogmatic, as ill-conceived by less intelligent persons. The mother is the authority to verify the identity of the father. She is the authority for such confidential knowledge. Therefore, authority is not dogmatic. In the Bhagavad Gita, this truth is confirmed in the 4th chapter, 4.2. And the perfect system of learning is to receive it from authority. The same system is accepted universally as true, but only the false argue speaks against it. For example, modern spacecraft fly in the sky, and when the scientists say that they travel to the other side of the moon, men believe these stories blindly because they have accepted the modern scientists as authorities. The authorities speak and the people in general believe them. But in the case of the Vedic truths, they have been taught not to believe. Even if they accept them, they give a different interpretation. Each and every man wants a direct perception of Vedic knowledge, but foolishly they deny it. This means that the misguided man can believe one authority, the scientist, but will reject the authority of the Vedas. The result is that people have degenerated. So Prabhupada is making the first point that the Vedic knowledge is not ascending. It's not experimental. It is descending. It is deductive. It's coming down from Krishna. And because it's coming down from Krishna, it is perfect. There is no question of verification and is no question of researching. Knowledge coming from a perfect source like the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always perfect. And when one accepts, when one understands that, then it makes one's life very easy and simple. Because if you don't know anything, then you just have to ask, well, what do the Vedas say? That means, what does Krishna say? And if Krishna says it's like this, then it's like this. And we accept and we move on. There's no question of debating. With the scientists, because they are researching things on their own accord, then one scientist can discover something that other scientists didn't discover, and in this way it changes. Or one scientist, discovers a little more than another scientist, and therefore he changes the initial discovery, and it keeps evolving. And sometimes they even misunderstand because your senses are limited. So what you see is not really the truth. And therefore, in this way, it just complicates the process of receiving knowledge. I mean, consider if you had to experiment who your father is. Your mother didn't tell you your father is. Like Prabhupada gives the example of one child. Because the father had to work 2 hours away, he would leave very early in the morning before the child wakes up. And by the time he comes in the evening, the child is asleep. So day in and day out, the child never gets to see his father. And then when it's a holiday, the child, finds out there's a man in his house. And the mother and the child asks the mother, "Mommy, who's this? Who's this stranger?" And the mother says, "Well, that's your father, my son." "Oh, really? I haven't seen him before." So if he says, "Well, no, I don't believe you, I'm going to do experiments, blood tests, DNA tests, to see." Now, at least he knows the person that he has to test on by the mercy of the mother. So his scope is narrowed. But imagine if you had to go to the world and do an experiment on all men to see who your father is. Very complicated, practical, and impossible task. So the Vedas, our mother, can tell us everything about our Supreme Father. And we see the knowledge of the Vedas is perfect. If you look at scientists that have researched how a child is born or the stages the child goes through from the union of this, from conception as the child now grows into a embryo, and then a fully a child that's born. And if you see the stages that a child goes through in that development, the Vedas, the Bhagavatam has that same development. The scriptures have the same development. If you look at some of the the planetary structures and you compare it to you compare the West and the Vedic understanding, you see it's practically similar. In fact, in many cases, the Vedas are even more accurate in terms of distances, in terms of these details. So like that is so many evidences that verify and prove the power and the validity of the Vedas. We find that the Vedas also describe the moon planet and who stays on the moon planet. Now they went to the moon and they found no one. So if they found no one on the moon, then the conclusion is, well, then they possibly didn't go to the moon. And when Prabhupada made it very clear they didn't go to the moon in 1969, many devotees didn't accept. And then years later, now you find all the truth that's coming out that they didn't land on the moon. It was basically a faked film show that was projected across the globe. So every single person in 1969 that was seeing the television screen on the moon landing was fooled. They were thinking, and because they accepted the scientists as authorities, whatever was presented to them by the powers on the top, people accept it. This is the challenge people have in Kali Yuga. You don't know who is presenting what, and therefore you cannot verify the facts. You will be presented to what they want you to see and know. But the Vedic knowledge is not like that. The Vedic knowledge is perfect, and that perfect knowledge is what we need to know for us to perfect our lives. And we are blessed to be in such an illustrious lineage of great acharyas, great teachers, where the Lord himself is in the line as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Krishna himself is the original teacher of all the knowledge that's coming in our line. So we have to have faith and direct our authority or authorship in the Vedic scriptures. In this way, we will be blessed. If we do not do this, and if people do not do this, Prabhupada made it very clear, the result is that people have degenerated. And we see how people have degenerated in terms of values, in terms of compassion, in terms of morality, what to talk about spirituality. So this is the result of being distracted away from the Vedas to other sources and forms of knowledge. Then Prabhupada focused on an important statement made by Bhishma Dev. Adyo Narayana. Here is an authority speaking about Shri Krishna as the personality, as the original personality of Godhead, the first Narayan. So very often this question comes, because you see it in the movies also, that Krishna comes from Narayan, and they accept Narayan as the original. So Bhishma Dev is saying, no, 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 no. Shri Krishna is the original. The original candle is Shri Krishna. Narayan expands from Krishna. Therefore, Adyo Narayan, the origin of Narayan, Adi Narayan. Even such an impersonalist as Acharya Sankara has said in the beginning of his commentary on Bhagavad Gita that Narayan, the personality of God, is beyond the material creation. The universe is one of the material creations, but Narayan is transcendental to such material paraphernalia. Bhishma Dev is one of the 12 Mahajans who know the principles of transcendental knowledge. His confirmation of Lord Krishna's being the original personality of Godhead is also corroborated by the impersonal Sankara. All other acharyas have also concluded the statement, and thus there is no chance of not accepting Lord Krishna as the original personality of Godhead. Bhishma Dev says that he is the first Narayan. This is also confirmed by Brahmaji in the Bhagavatam 10:14-14. Krishna is the first Narayan. In the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, there are unlimited number of Narayans who are all the same personality of Godhead and are considered to be the plenary expansions of the original personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. The first form of the Lord Shri Krishna, the first form of the Lord Shri Krishna first expands himself as the form of Baladev. And Baladev expands in so many other forms such as Shankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Vasudeva, Narayan, Purusha, Rama, and Shinga. All these expansions are one and the same Vishnu Tattva, and Shri Krishna is the original source of all primary expansions. He is therefore the direct personality of Godhead. He is the center of the material world, and he is the predominating deity known as Narayan in all the Vaikuntha planets. Therefore, his movements amongst human beings is another sort of bewilderment. The Lord therefore says in Bhagavad Gita, the foolish persons consider him to be one of the human beings without knowing the intricacies of his movements. So here, Bhishma Dev is, as Mahajan is making very clear that Krishna is Adyo Narayana, he's the origin of Narayan. And we know even from analyzing the rasas, mellows, that the different incarnations and expansions of Krishna can interact with. From there also we can understand that Narayan cannot have very many of the intimate relationships that Krishna has. Narayan and his devotees have awe and reverence worship, whereas Krishna and his devotees have madhurya, sweetness, intimacy as the foundational relationship. So that way also we know that intimacy is greater than awe and reverence. And that also tells us that Krishna is the origin, because from the origin, you can get subsets. You can get awe and reverence from Krishna, but you can't get intimacy and sweetness from Narayan. Just like if I got 10 rands, I cannot take 100 rands from 10 rands. But if I got 100 rands, I can take 10 rands. So Krishna is like the 100 rands. Mahavishnu or Narayan is like the 10 rand. They're all the Supreme Personality of Godhead's expansions. So they're not different from Krishna. And Krishna allows himself by his sweet will to expand in these different features for his pleasure. For his pleasure. Somebody will challenge, oh, but why does Krishna have to expand himself in so many forms? It's confusing us. Well, he didn't expand, to confuse you, and he didn't expand for any other reason but for his own pleasure. And because Krishna is independent, he can expand in as many forms as he wants because of his free, sweet, independent will. He doesn't need our sanction or permission in terms of how many times, how many forms he can expand. Just like if you are free to fly, then nobody can restrict you from flying because you are free to fly. Wherever you want to fly, you can fly. So similarly, Krishna is independent to do whatever he wants because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada is making the point that Krishna bewilders people when he appears in this world in these different features and forms, because people cannot recognize Krishna. Only great Mahajans like Bhishma Dev are able to understand and recognize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then Prabhupada talks about Krishna's bewilderment energy that Bhishma Dev talks about. The energy bewilders the living entities in two ways. So what two ways are we bewildered? Or are living entities bewildered by Krishna's energy? And Prabhupada shares that the bewilderment regarding Sri Krishna is due to the action of his twofold internal and external energies upon the third one, called the marginal energy. The living entities are expansions of his marginal energy. And thus, they are sometimes bewildered by the internal energy and sometimes by the external energy. So these are the two bewildering aspects of Krishna's energy that Vishnu is talking about. By internal energetic bewilderment, Shri Krishna expands himself into unlimited numbers of Narayan and exchanges or accepts transcendental loving service from the living entities in the transcendental world. And by his external energetic expansions, he incarnates himself in the material world amongst the men, animals, and demigods to establish his forgotten relationship with the living entities in different species of lives. Great authorities like Bhishma Dev, however, escape his bewilderment by the mercy of the Lord. So Krishna bewilders those in the spiritual world and have intimate relationships. And Krishna bewilders living entities in the material world by not recognizing him when he appears in different species, different incarnations, features. Just like if you had to go to other traditions and say God appears as a fish, it's inconceivable. It may have been inconceivable to us before we came to Krishna consciousness. And even when we're in Krishna consciousness, in the beginning, it's like, really, seriously? Krishna appears as a fish, as a tortoise, as a half man, half lion, as a dwarf. as a bore. It's inconceivable, bewildering. But when we begin to understand, well, why can't he? He can appear in any form he desires. He's all-powerful, he's totally spiritual, he's not material, he's unlimited. He can do anything. So therefore, because we understand that, when we hear that Krishna appears as a fish, Krishna appears in every species, we don't become bewildered, we become inspired. That just see, even though Krishna is the all-powerful, the original, the supreme personality of Godhead, the person from whom everything expands, yet he does not enforce or arrogantly control people. He still has a heart, and he compassionately and mercifully appears in every species to attract those souls in that species that are imprisoned and distracted from his loving service. So this is how wonderful Krishna is. So when we hear, it inspires us, like Bhishma Dev. When Bhishma Dev is thinking about Krishna's position, it's inspiring to him, it's increasing his loving attachment. How wonderful this personality is, Krishna. So in this way, Krishna has his energies to facilitate his desire, his service of loving exchanges. 19. Asyanubhavam Bhagavan Veda Guyatamam Shiva Devarshi Narada Shakshad Bhagavan Kapilo Nripa. So who are those other souls who are also aware of Krishna's glories and not bewildered? O King, Bhishmadev says, Lord Shiva, Narada, the sages among the demigods, the sage among the demigods, and Kapila, the incarnation of Godhead, all know very confidentially about his glories through direct contact. Prabhupada in the purport says, pure devotees of the Lord are Buddhas, or persons who know the glories of the Lord in different transcendental loving services. As the Lord has innumerable expansions of his plenary forms, there are innumerable pure devotees of the Lord, who are engaged in the exchange of service of different humors. This point that Srila Prabhupada starts off the purport with is also very important for us to understand, that we are not necessarily unique or in a special position that, oh, I'm a great devotee of Krishna. When we're rendering service, like Prabhupada would say, if we're cooking for Krishna, we're rendering service to Krishna, we should not think that Krishna needs my service. Because if I don't cook for him, he's going to starve. If I don't clean his temple, he's going to be in a difficult situation. If I don't render this service, he's going to be in some challenge. No. Why? Because Prabhupada says, as the Lord has innumerable expansions of his plenary form, there are innumerable pure devotees of the Lord. The Lord has millions and millions, unlimited number of pure devotees to render service to him. He is not running short of servants. And therefore, it's not like he needs you, but really, we need him. And when we render service to him, it is we who are blessed and benefited, not him. He is actually doing us a favor by accepting our service. The deities of the Lord, they're accepting our service. It is their compassion upon us that they are accepting our offering, they are accepting our service. And when we consider what type of service, just like we may be cooking a Sunday feast, and we cook a Sunday feast and we offer it and we're so proud. Oh, just see, I cooked a Sunday feast. But we have to, check our consciousness that Krishna is so merciful. He's giving me an opportunity to serve the devotees, to offer him what I'm cooking, and he's accepting it through disciplic succession for my own purification, for me to benefit, because it's the offering that I'm cooking is not even with unmotivated, uninterrupted, pure devotion. And yet Krishna is accepting. Thank you. So in gratitude, in humility, we always have to understand that Krishna is blessing us. Also, we have to know that it's not like we the only, in our lineage is the only pure devotees that there. No, there are innumerable pure devotees across the universe in all different phases and dimensions of lives, or existence, spiritual world, material world, different lineages. Krishna has innumerable expansions, therefore innumerable devotees. Not like there was a joke. One person comes to the spiritual world and he's been led by another pure devotee who's there, and he's giving him a tour. And this new devotee that joins the spiritual world, he's from a specific lineage or group or society, and he joins. And then as the tour guide is taking him, they come across a big wall. And then the devotee asks, why is this big wall there? And the guide tells him, shh. Those on the opposite side, or those who are here, they're thinking that they're the only people in the spiritual world. It's like exclusive. Nobody else is here. So that wall can also be there in our own lives, where we think we are the only ones. We're the only ones that have this knowledge. We are the only ones that are blessed. We're the only ones that are pure. This also is not the proper understanding. The spiritual is unlimited, therefore Krishna has unlimited souls, and Krishna can inspire, Krishna can have pure devotees in every facet of existence. Naturally, to recognize pure devotees, one needs to be blessed. But we should know that it's not exclusive. Ordinarily, there are 12 great devotees of the Lord, namely Brahma, Narada, Shiva, Kumara, Kapila, Manu, Prahlad, Bhishma, Janaka, Sukadeva, and Sukadeva Goswami, Bali Maharaj, and Yamaraj. Bhishma Dev, although one of them, has mentioned only 3 important names of the 12 who know the glories of the Lord. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, one of the great acharyas in modern age, explains that Anubhava, or the glory of the Lord, is first appreciated by devotees in ecstasy, manifesting the symptoms of perspiration, trembling, weeping, bodily eruption, etc., which are further enhanced by steady understanding of the glories of the Lord. Such different understandings of bhavas are exchanged between Yashoda and the Lord, binding the Lord by ropes, and in the chariot driving by Arjuna in the exchange of love with Arjuna. These glories of the Lord are exhibited in his being subordinate before his devotees, and that is another feature of the glories of the Lord. Sukadeva Goswami and the Kumaras, although situated in transcendental position, became converted by another feature of the Bhava and turned into pure devotees of the Lord. Tribulations imposed upon the devotees by the Lord constitute another exchange of transcendental, exchanging tribulations imposed upon the devotees by the Lord constitute another exchange of transcendental power between the Lord and the devotees. And the Lord says, I put my devotees into difficulty, and thus the devotee becomes more purified in exchanging transcendental bhava with me. Unquote. Placing the devotees into the material, placing the devotee into material troubles necessitates delivering him from the illusory material relations. The material relations are based on reciprocation of material enjoyment, which depends mainly on material resources. Therefore, when material resources are withdrawn by the Lord, the devotee is 100% attracted towards the transcendent loving service of the Lord. Thus, the Lord snatches the resources, snatches the fallen souls from the maya of material existence. Tribulations offered by the Lord to his devotees are different from the tribulations result from vicious actions. All these glories of the Lord are especially known by the great Mahajans like Brahma, Shiva, Narada, Kapila, Kumara, and Bhishma as mentioned above. And one is able to grasp it by their grace. So in the purport, Prabhupada is sharing different ways the Lord reciprocates and exchange loving relationship with the devotees. And there are different levels, different categories of intimacy, even tribulations that the Lord places is also a loving exchange. So when we see sometimes devotees are placed into difficulty, we may think it's unfair. Why is Krishna doing this? Why is Krishna, putting the Pandavas in such situations? Why did Krishna kill the washerman that we spoke about last week? Why, did Krishna leave Devaki in the prison cell? So in so many ways, we see Krishna, does certain things. You look at Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas. He got married, such beautiful, wonderful wife. And he took sannyas. So in so many ways, if we analyze, well, why is Krishna doing these things? Because he is Swarat, he's independent. And whatever he does is always glorious for the devotees. Externally, it may seem like tribulations. Prabhupada gives the example like love bite. In one of his Bhaktivedanta purports, Prabhupada says, that's the relation between Krishna. The lover bites you and it's okay, no problem. So Krishna places his devotees into tribulations and the devotee says, no problem. How wonderful. In fact, we see Queen Kunti, the Pandavas, they went through so much. Yet, they're still here with Krishna. And in fact, even after going through so much difficulties, Queen Kunti is still telling Krishna, please stay, please stay. So they haven't given up their relationship to Krishna. They didn't say, well, Krishna, you put in so much challenges, we don't like you. We divorcing. No? In fact, their relationship intensified. So this is what Krishna does. Their tribulations is not vicious. It's not like the material tribulations in the material world. It is non-different, as Prabhupada described last week, than Krishna's loving exchanges. So this is wonderful. Krishna has many, many ways to interact and exchange, interact with his loving devotees. And the Mahajans, they appreciate this, they can see this, they can understand this. And in this way, they're able to guide souls in the right direction, to not misunderstand or lose faith in Krishna. 20. Yamanyase matuleyam priyam mitram suritamam akoro sachivam bhutam sauridat atta charitim. O king, that personality whom out of ignorance only you thought to be your maternal cousin, your very dear friend, your well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc., is that very personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. Purport. Lord Shri Krishna, although acting as a cousin, brother, friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc. of the Pandavas, was still the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Out of his causeless mercy and favor upon his unalloyed devotees, he performs all kinds of services. But that does not mean that he has changed his position as the absolute person. To think of him as an ordinary man is the grossest type of ignorance. So Krishna does many, many menial services. He was bathing the feet of Sudama. He was the charioteer of Arjuna. And the charioteer of Arjuna means on a battlefield, you can't tell the charioteer, go left, go right, stop, because there's so much noise. So the way Arjuna would tell Krishna as the charioteer to stop, etc., he would kick Krishna on the left, that means go left. Kick Krishna on the right, means go right. Kick Krishna in the center of his back, stop. So Krishna was willing to accept the kicks of Arjuna, yet it did not minimize his position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We see even when Krishna brought milk to Madhavendra Puri, still it did not minimize Krishna's position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is ready to serve his devotees in all different ways. It does not minimize his position as the absolute person. This actually amplifies the devotee's love for Krishna, because it shows that Krishna is not proud of his position. I am the supreme, therefore I do not do that. No. Krishna, he is happy to do anything for his devotees because of love. It is love that moves, that directs, that controls Krishna, not his power and position. And it is the love that that same love is what attracts the devotees to surrender to Krishna. It's not so much Krishna's position that allows them to surrender. We're not surrendering to Krishna because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're not loving Krishna because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That may be the beginning, that we have to understand his position, we have to understand our duty and then surrender, but really we need to come to the level where we love Krishna simply because he's the most lovable personality. As Jiva Goswami says, the only reason we accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is because of his quality, his loving relationship with his devotees. Therefore, we accept Krishna. And when Krishna, due to his humility, is rendering such service, and if we become recipients of such service, such mercy, we should be very careful not to become proud, to think, oh, just see, I'm special, or to think, just see, Krishna is not the Supreme. We should always understand Krishna never loses his position. There will never, ever be a vacancy for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, for people in this material world who are trying to become God, it's foolishness. Prabhupada says the greatest snare of Maya, because you're trying to get a position that has never been, that will never have a vacancy. Because why? God means that person who has no equal and no higher. That is God. And because he has no equal and no higher, no one is more powerful than God to dethrone Krishna. But if anyone takes up the challenge, think like Pondrak in the Krishna book, who had similar features to Krishna and was claiming he's Krishna, then Krishna will teach them a lesson. 21. Sarvatmana samadrisho ya adya ya adva yasya nahan krite tat kritam mate vaishamyam niravadyasya na pachit. Being the absolute personality of Godhead, He is present in everyone's heart. He is equally kind to everyone. He is free from the false ego of the differentiation. Therefore, whatever He does is free from material inebriety. He is equibalanced. So now Bhishma Dev is sharing some qualities and glories of Krishna. And Prabhupada expands on some of these. Because He is absolute, there is nothing different from Him. Very powerful. Because He's absolute, everything is connected to Krishna. What does that mean? That means we can use everything in Krishna's service and not fall into Maya when we see everything non-different from Krishna. All His energies are connected to Krishna. So if I have the proper attitude to use everything I have in Krishna's service, I will always be connected to Krishna. He is Kaivalya. There is nothing except Him. And this is not an impersonal perspective, because Krishna is also described, He and His energies are one and different. So we always have to see this in the light of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. Remember, we covered this point in the first canto of one of the early chapters. We covered this point that we always have to see in terms of the Paribhasa Sutra of Srimad Bhagavatam. Etecham Sakala Krishnastu Bhagavan Swam. We always have to see in line with that in terms of the Achintya Bheda Bheda philosophy. So everything that we're covering in the Bhagavatam must always be aligned with that understanding. Everything and everyone is manifested by His energy. And thus He is present everywhere by His energy, being non-different from it. The sun is identified with every inch of the sun rays and every molecule particle of the rays. Similarly, the Lord is distributed by His energy, by His different energies. He is Paramatma, or super soul, present everyone as the supreme guidance. And therefore, He's already the chariot driver and counselor of all living beings. How wonderful. People seek counseling. Who can be a better counselor than Krishna? The challenge is they don't want to hear Him. And even if He speaks, they don't have the ability to hear Him, because their mind is making so much noise, they can't even hear Krishna. So Krishna, He is there as a super soul, and He is the supreme guide. And here's another beautiful point that Prabhupada is revealing. If we align ourselves to Krishna, if we surrender to Krishna, then we will always be guided in the best possible way to live in this world. The challenge is we have our own agenda. We have our own roadmap. We are following and aligning to everyone else that's fallible instead of Krishna. So we need to realize, let me align with Krishna. And the Bhagavatam is revealing, as is Bhishma Dev, the benefit of aligning to Krishna. The benefit of focusing our attention on Krishna. The benefit of loving Krishna. Nobody can beat the result, the benefit, the outcome, the bliss that comes from loving Krishna. He is the original Supreme Personality, and He is unique. And therefore, when one has a relationship with Krishna, then he experiences that unique mellow. So Krishna is our guide. When he therefore exhibits himself as a chariot driver of Arjuna, there is no change in his exalted position. It is the power of devotional service only that demonstrates him as the chariot driver or the messenger. Since he has nothing to do with the material conception of life, because he is the absolute spiritual identity, there is for him no superior or inferior action. Being the absolute personality of God, that he has no false ego. And so he does not identify himself with anything different from him. The material conception of ego is equibalanced in him. He does not feel, therefore, inferior by becoming the chariot driver of his pure devotee. It is the glory of the pure devotee that only he can bring. It is the glory of the pure devotee that only he can bring about the service from the affectionate Lord. So Krishna, he does not have any false ego. Ahang krite, ahang krite, free from material identity of false ego. We have false ego. Therefore, when we do something that's menial, that's lower than our position, then a false ego gets pricked, gets hurt. Just like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj had the policy, and Prabhupada also instituted, anyone that joins a temple, the first thing they have to do is wash pots. Now, if somebody is like a big doctor, proud, he comes and he says, why should I wash pots? It's like how it shows that false ego gets pricked. Because one is thinking, I'm someone good, I'm someone important. So because we have false ego, then it pricks. Krishna does not have any false ego. Therefore, whether he does something menial or something glorious, his position is never changed. He's not influenced. He's never attached. Nirabhadyasya, freedom from attachment. Krishna can do so many things and yet be detached. We do so many things, we become attached. Is equally samadrisha, is equally disposed to everyone. That means we all can get Krishna's mercy. It's a question of, do we want it? Are we serious about Krishna's mercy? So it's really not a question of why Krishna is not merciful to me. No, the question is, why you're not serious? Because if you're serious, then you seriously get Krishna's mercy. In fact, Krishna wants to give the mercy. He is more interested in giving the mercy than you are taking it. Therefore, we want to intensify our desire to get his mercy. We want to be convinced of Krishna's position. We want to be convinced that we are not making a mistake. And how? By following the acharyas, the Mahajans. We follow the disciplic succession, because that is infallible knowledge. 22. Tatapya ekanta bhakteshu pasya bhupanu kampitam yanme sums tyajata shaksha krishno darshanam agata. Yet, despite his being equally kind to everyone, he has graciously come before me while I am ending my life, for I am his unflinching servitor. So Bhishma Dev is seeing and grateful that Krishna has come before him. There was no need. But because Krishna is Bhaktavatsa, because Krishna always reciprocates, then Krishna is here. So now we see how Bhishma Dev, from sharing the Pandavas' situation, instructing Yudhishthira Maharaj, glorifying Krishna and his qualities, and now bringing his attention to his relationship with Krishna. So slowly he's expertly directing his mind, his attention to Krishna. And now he's very grateful. He's thanking Krishna that you've come at this very important moment. And is it by chance that you've come here? No. Vishmadev, as an acharya, is setting the example that everyone will get this opportunity if they are unflinching servitors. So Prabhupada says, the Supreme Lord, the absolute personality of God, Shri Krishna, although equal to everyone, is still inclined to his unflinching devotee who is completely surrendered and knows no one else as his protector and master. When I heard the one devotee who's sharing his situation in Russia, Ukraine, and he made this very one, is the point that we know Krishna is our protector, but please pray for us, not really for our protection, but pray for us that we may be able to think of Krishna at the time of death. So that is a very wonderful request. It showed that they convinced that yes, Krishna will protect. He's a protector. If he wants to protect us, who can kill us? And if he wants to kill us, who can protect us? It's not the material conflict and war that's going to kill us. Because they're not in control. Time factor is. And the time factor is under Krishna's control. And if the time factor wants to administer whatever the result is, whether it's protection or not protection, to be killed or not to be killed, that is Krishna's will. But our focus should simply be, as Prabhupada said, even if there's a war, chant Hare Krishna. Remember Krishna. So if Prabhupada said, even if there's a war, remember Krishna, how are we going to test whether we have realized that instruction of Sri Prabhupada and are able to do that if there is no war? Now you may get different wars. You may get a war like Ukraine and Russia. You may get a war, tribal war. You may get a family war where husband and wife fighting. You may get so many different types of war. You may get a mental war with conflicting desires. In every single one of them, our focus should be Krishna. We should be unflinching. Consider this word flinch. It's like if a snake, you are sitting in the Bhagavatam class, and all of a sudden a snake appears. If a snake appears, you're going to flinch. Consider Maharaj Parikshit. He did not flinch. He was unflinching. He was focused. He was absorbed. So we want to come to that level of absorption of Krishna consciousness. It's not easy, but it's possible. It takes time. We have to be patient, but we have to be serious to come to this level. Even if it takes millions of lifetimes, this is the goal. Unflinching devotion, faith in the Supreme Lord. That we do not waver, fixed. So having unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord as one's protector, friend, and master is the natural condition of eternal life. So our daily practice of Krishna consciousness is really to remind us of this. That Krishna is our protector. Krishna is our dear friend. And Krishna is our master. And this needs to go from theory, from the head to the heart. And if we keep associating with Srimad Bhagavatam, the glories of Krishna, the pure devotees, keep rendering service, this will become a reality. That one day we will understand Krishna not with our head or intelligence, but with our heart. Our heart will speak, our heart will feel, and our heart will see. A living entity is so made by the will of the Almighty that he is most happy when placing himself in a condition of absolute dependence. If you want the most happiness, there's the solution. You want little happiness, there's the solution. And because Krishna is pleasure seeking, we also pleasure seeking. So Krishna is pleasure seeking. He makes so many myriads of arrangements for his pleasure. If we want to seek the most pleasure, then this should be our focus. Absolute dependence on Krishna. Submit to Krishna. And that submission to Krishna starts with giving ourselves to the holy name. Giving our so-called resources in the service of the holy name. Because nothing belongs to us in any way. Just like you come in the beginning, you give some donation. So that's a beginning. It's start. We gave the example, one sannyasi was going door to door, begging, Madhukari. And he came to one door, Bhiksham Dehi. And the person opened the door and saw him. So went inside and they brought ash from the fireplace and gave him some ash. And the sannyasi was so happy. He was happy. Why? Because they started the journey of giving. Even though they just gave ash, but at least they started the journey of giving. So like that, at least we should start our journey of dependence on Krishna. And that dependence starts with spending time with Krishna. And the more I spend time with Krishna, the more I will begin to realize that I can depend on Krishna. Because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if he is in control, then there is no lamentation, there is no fear, there is no distress. He is the perfect master, the perfect lover. The opposite tendency is the cause of fall down. So if you don't depend on Krishna, you want to become independent, which is like the slogan for this world. I want to become independent. Independent of husband and wife relationship, independent of family responsibility, independent of different levels of independence are there. And ultimately that's breeding independence from the Supreme Lord. That's the cause of fall down. The living entity has this tendency of falling down by dint of misidentifying himself as fully independent to lord it over material nature. The root cause of all troubles is in false egotism. One must draw towards the Lord in all circumstances. So Prabhupada is revealing the positive and the negative and directing us. What must we do? Always bring your attention in every circumstance. Doesn't matter what your circumstance is. Bring it to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The appearance of Lord Krishna at the deathbed of Bhishmaji is due to his being an unflinching devotee of the Lord. Arjuna had some bodily relation with Krishna because the Lord happened to be his maternal cousin. But Bhishma had no such bodily relation. Therefore, the cause of attraction was due to intimate relationship of the soul. Yet, because the relation of body is very pleasing and natural, the Lord is more pleased when he's addressed as a son of Majnanda, the son of Yashoda, the lover of Radharani. This affinity by bodily relationship with the Lord is another feature of reciprocating loving service with the Lord. Bhishmadev is conscious of the sweetness of transcendental humor, and therefore he likes to address the Lord as Vijaya Sakhe, Partha Sakhe, etc. Exactly like Nanda Nandana or Yashoda Nandana. The best way to establish our relationship in transcendental sweetness is to approach him through his recognized devotees. One should not try to establish the relationship directly. There must be a via medium which is transparent and competent to lead us to the right path. So we have to understand we got material relationships in this material world, and we also have soul relationship in this world. We want to move away from material relationship to soul relationship. We want to go that direction. We want to go deeper. And when you go to a soul relationship, which in most cases will be different from what happens in material relationship, the relationship is deeper and more intimate, more powerful. Like one time they asked Bhakti Nishinga Maharaj, the students asked Bhakti Nishinga Maharaj, why you don't greet, like shaking hands or, hugging. Why don't you greet like that? And he responded in this same line that he says, shaking hands and, hugging, this is material relationship. This is what happens when you have a material relationship. But when you greet or reciprocate on the level of soul, it's different. So on the level of soul, when we see another devotee, we bow down and we offer. So this is on the soul relationship. And this goes deeper. This is more powerful than just material reciprocation or relationship. So we have to understand there is a different culture when it comes to on the soul, on the platform of soul. And Krishna wants us to come to that level. In every way, we're moving towards that direction. The more we move to that direction, the more the spiritual world awakens. The spiritual world comes closer. Then Prabhupada, in concluding words, he makes it very clear how we can establish our relationship with Krishna. This transcendental sweetness. We have to approach it through the via media, through the devotees. So the pure devotees have to be transparent and competent. Transparency means we can state that even though we may have so many spiritual masters and acharyas between us and Krishna, they do not block. In fact, they like telescopes that bring Krishna closer and transparent. The more devotees we have in between us and Krishna, the more Krishna comes closer to you. Just like when you want to see far, you bring in different lenses to bring the object closer. And all the lenses are transparent. They bring the object that you see to your sight. So that is the goal of the spiritual masters, the devotees, the acharyas in our line. They are not translucent, like semi-transparent, vague. They're creating, they have their own interpretation, their own understanding, they're giving their own philosophy. No, they're not. They are not blocking Krishna's view or vision. we can see Krishna very clearly. And they're not even opaque. Opaque means you can't see anything. You see something else. So the pure devotees and even we as servants of Prabhupada, we should simply take the message and give the message without tainting, without changing, without adding or subtracting. Our business is to be transparent via media to Krishna. The relationship is between the soul and Krishna via the devotees or the spiritual masters. Now, the spiritual master should be a transparent medium, but Prabhupada adds another very important quality. They must be competent. So that means just purity is not the only qualification. Being transparent is not the only qualification. They must be competent. They have to have the skill. It's not like, okay, you know, he's a pure devotee, it's okay. No, no, he's a pure devotee with skill, with competency. So those two qualities are very important. We see Prabhupada was a pure devotee, he was a transparent via medium, and he was competent. And if we have someone in our life that is both transparent and competent to lead us on the right path, then we have to understand that is Krishna's greatest blessing. Now, someone may say, well, I don't have anyone like that. Srila Prabhupada is there. Through his Bhaktivedanta purports, Prabhupada is very transparent in who Krishna is. And we see Prabhupada is so competent in putting a society and systems and a program and all parts of Krishna consciousness so that that can become a perfect vehicle to help people progress. Like just see, Srila Prabhupada was competent enough to publish Srimad Bhagavatam and distribute that across the globe so that we now in one isolated part of South Africa are able to associate with the Bhagavatam. That was Prabhupada's competency, so expert, so skilled. And when you start analyzing all the areas that Prabhupada was so competent in, you'll faint. As you advance and progress in Krishna consciousness, you will see, wow, Srila Prabhupada did this because of this, or Prabhupada did that because of this, or Prabhupada introduced it because of, in so many ways. So for us, it's simply a matter of accepting what Prabhupada has given for our benefit as it is, and then helping others by simply transmitting the message in a transparent way so that they can also be benefited. In this way, we can uphold the legacy that we have been given. When we start adding to what Prabhupada has given or subtracting, we are now interfering with Prabhupada's transparency and competency. We are actually becoming the problem. We find, I can give an example. And you could take any field, any devotional field. And you could take the field of cooking. You could take the field of deity worship. You could take the field of kirtan. Take any field and you'll see that instead of just following what Prabhupada has given us and maintaining that, we start to add, subtract, and complicate things. diluting Prabhupada's competency. Because Prabhupada's competency and transparency is unmatched. He is the chief commander. And because he's the chief commander, he's doing, or he is giving Krishna consciousness is the most super excellent. When we start thinking, well, even though he's a chief commander, let me just, I think this way is a better idea, it starts to dampen, it starts to wane the result. So I'll give an example. Prabhupada gave us a certain style of kirtan. Now, when we start adding to the mantra, when we start changing, the style that Prabhupada, gave us, because everything that Prabhupada gave us has a reason behind it. Madhuri Dasi was telling me that I think from there was a devotee's name. So she was there, one devotee was making the point that in his research of Narottam Das Thakur's kirtan, it's described Narottam Das Thakur's kirtan were short, and there was a tempo, there was a speed. And that is aligned to what Prabhupada gave us. He wanted the mantra to be short and speed, not long and slow. Now, long and slow is not an offense. It's not wrong, but it's not aligned to our allegiance to Srila Prabhupada. And because we want to represent Srila Prabhupada, then therefore we want to maintain his competency, what he gave us. And therefore it's more ideal to have short and fast. Even Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, for example, in the kirtan, he didn't like the long stretching. He wanted the short and quick. Why? Because in the long stretching, you may get in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you may get one mantra. But if you do it short and quick, you may get 5 mantras. So because now you got 5 more times the holy names, therefore there's far more benefit in that at least you would have caught more of the holy names and your mind is able to focus more quicker because it doesn't get distracted. So that was just an example to illustrate maintaining Prabhupada's transparency and competency. Another example is you find nowadays youngsters have the tendency to introduce before the Mahan Mantra different 1 or 2 lettered words and exclaiming emotions, etc. Oh, hey, hey, e, different. This is also a deviation. That's minimizing Prabhupada's competency to give us what he gave us and maintain that in a transparent way for the future generation. We are being obstacles in allowing others in the future to receive the same potency as we have received by Srila Prabhupada himself and his followers. Because as Prabhupada says, the best way to establish our relationship, that's the best way. As soon as we start to add, subtract, we are now minimizing that, and therefore it doesn't become the best way. We are becoming obstacles. So we should be very careful and cautious. 23. Bhaktya veshya manos yasmin vacha yannama kirtanyam tyajan kalevaram yogi muchyate karmabi. The personality of Godhead who appears in the mind of the devotee by attentive devotion and meditation and by chanting the holy name releases the devotee from the bondage of fruitful activities at the time of his quitting the material body. Beautiful verse for us to remember even during chanting or before chanting. It's a beautiful prayer also. The personality of Godhead who appears in the mind of the devotee by attentive devotion and meditation, and by chanting the holy name, releases the devotee from the bondage of fruitive activities at the time of his quitting the material body. This is what happens at the time of death. Prabhupada tells us about what true yoga is. Yoga means concentration of the mind detached from all other subject matter. It is not gymnastic, it is not health, it is not different benefits that people are looking for in today's world of yoga. It is to become detached from all subject matter. Does that mean to become empty, void, nothingness, nirvana? No. Prabhupada says, and actually, such concentration is samadhi, or 100% engagement in the service of the Lord. And one who concentrates his attention in that manner is called a yogi. So this is a real yogi, one who focuses his attention on Krishna and service to Krishna. Otherwise, he's a bogey yogi. Now Prabhupada gives a beautiful few sentences. Such a yogi devotee of the Lord engages himself 24 hours daily in the service of the Lord, so that his whole attention is engrossed with the thoughts of the Lord in ninefold devotional service, namely hearing, chanting, remembering, worshiping, praying, becoming a voluntary service, carrying out the orders, establishing a friendly relationship, or offering all that one possesses in the service of the Lord. By such practice of yoga or linking up in the service of the Lord, one is recognized by the Lord himself, and it is explained in Bhagavad Gita concerning the highest perfectional state of samadhi. This should be our goal, even as householders. We are not meant to be engaging part-time. We definitely not to be engaging no time. Part-time is great. Full-time is best. And the goal is to go from no time to part-time to full-time. So one of my life's mission is to help Grihastha devotees go from no time to part-time to full-time. Full-time is probably saying 24 hours daily to serve the Lord, to have that opportunity to be able to serve the Lord 24 hours a day. That means our boss is no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Doesn't mean you're going to stay up for 24 hours and serve. No, that's impractical. You'll have to take 6 to 8 hours rest, but you are resting not so that next day you can get up to serve your karmi boss, but so that we can get up next day for Mangalati to serve the Supreme Boss. So just a commercial break. Next week, Sunday, I'll be presenting this, the vision of Chaitanya Life Academy, which is focused on this wonderful statement of Srila Prabhupada. How do we move in the direction so that we can engage 24 hours a day? So I'll send out invites. Anybody's interested, you're most welcome to attend. Prabhupada then continues, the Lord calls such a rare devotee the best amongst all the yogis. Such a perfect yogi is enabled by the divine grace of the Lord, to concentrate his mind upon the Lord with a perfect sense of consciousness. And thus, by chanting his holy name before quitting the body, the yogi is at once transferred by the internal energy of the Lord to one of the eternal planets where there is no question of material life and its concomitant factors. In the material existence, a living being has to endure the material conditions of threefold miseries, life after life, according to his fruit of work. Adi-devic, adi-bhautic, adi-atmic suffering, suffering caused by the demigods, by the other living entities, by one's body and mind. Such material life is produced by material desires only. Devotional service to the Lord does not kill the natural desire of the living being, but they are applied in the right cause of devotional service. This qualifies the desire to be transferred to the spiritual sky. General Bhishmadev is referring to a particular type of yoga called Bhakti Yoga, and he was fortunate enough to have the Lord directly in his presence before he's quitting his material body. He therefore desires that the Lord stay before his view in the following verses. So this is perfection. This is what we're waiting for. This is our objective. All our services that we are rendering, everything we do in Krishna consciousness that we are rendering, is culminating at the time of death for this purpose, so that I can focus on Krishna. And if one is in that situation at the time of death, and one has to still give attention to family members and friends, we should follow in the footsteps of Bhishmadev. When that appropriate time comes, we need to withdraw from the family members and focus on Krishna and nothing but Krishna. Not like the family members are there until I die, I focus on the family members, because if you're focusing on the family members till you die, you are coming back. Now, if you want to come back, then that's the option. But if you don't want to come back, then we need, at least at a time of death, we need to become full-time absorbed in Krishna. So our goal is to become full-time rendering service to Krishna. And if we can't do that during our life, at least we should try to do that at a time of death. Say goodbye to your family members, and now you tell them, now please chant Hare Krishna and excuse me so that I can focus my attention on the Supreme Lord. And please facilitate and help me do that. That will be the greatest blessing, and they will be doing the greatest service. So Bhishmadev is teaching us. We find Srila Prabhupada himself taught us how to leave this world in a Krishna conscious way. Continually serving and remembering the Lord right up to his final breath. So this is how wonderful Prabhupada has taught us how to live in this world and how to die. Such a glorious example. 24. Sadeva Devo Bhagavan Pratikshatam Kale Varam Yabhat Itam Inom Yaham Prasanam Hasharanu Lot Hasharuna Lot Chanon Lasan Mukhambujodya Napathas Chaturbuja. May my Lord, who is four-handed and whose beautifully decorated lotus face, with eyes as red as a rising sun, is smiling, kindly await me at that moment when I quit this material body. So now Bhishmadev is revealing the form that he wants to see according to his eternal relationship with Krishna. That form of Parthasarati, and this is his desire, and Krishna knows his desire. Bhishmadev could leave at any time, and therefore he was leaving his body at the appropriate time. From a yogic perspective, which Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita. At the same time, he's leaving in the process of bhakti yoga, where he's remembering Krishna. And he's fortunate that Krishna is personally in front of him. We are fortunate that we have the holy name, Krishna in the form of the holy name in front of us, in our consciousness. Prabhupada in the purport says, Bhishmadev knew well that Lord Krishna is the original Narayan. His worshipable deity was four-handed Narayan. But he knew that the four-handed Narayan is a plenary expansion of Lord Krishna. Indirectly, he desired Lord Shri Krishna to manifest himself in his four-handed feature of Narayan. A Vaishnava is always humble in his behavior. Although it was 100% certain that Bhishmadev was approaching Vaikuntha Dham after just leaving his material body, still, as a humble Vaishnava, he desired to see the beautiful face of the Lord. For after quitting the present body, he might not be in the position to see the Lord anymore. A Vaishnava is not puffed up, although the Lord guarantees his pure devotee entrance into his abode. Here Bhishmadev says, as long as I do not quit this body, this means that the great general would quit the body by his own will. He was not being forced by the laws of nature. He was so powerful that he could stay in his material, in his body as long as he desired. He got his benediction from his father. He desired that the Lord stay before him in his four-handed Narayan feature, so that he might concentrate upon him and thus be in trance in that meditation. Then his mind might be sanctified with thinking of the Lord. Thus, he did not mind wherever he might go. A pure devotee is never very anxious to go back to the kingdom of God. He entirely depends on the good will of the Lord. He is equally satisfied even if the Lord desires him to go to hell. The Lord desires that a pure devotee entertains. The only desire that the pure devotee entertains is that he may always be in rapt attention with thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord, regardless. I'll read that again. The only desire that a pure devotee entertains is that he may always be in rapt attention with thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord, regardless. Bhishmadev wanted this much only, that his mind be absorbed in thinking of the Lord and that he passes away thus. That is the highest ambition of a pure devotee. So now we know what our ambition is. In the material world, people say, you should become ambitious. Others say, no, you should have an ambition. So here is our ambition. Our ambition, our highest ambition, is that we become absorbed in thinking of Krishna. And Prabhupada said we should, in such a way, live our life in such a way that we absorb our mind on the beautiful features, service of Krishna. And our destination is immaterial. Whether I go to the spiritual, material world, hell, heaven, doesn't matter. That's up to Krishna, wherever he wants to send me, so be it. He knows best. He can direct me in the best direction. He's my guide. I follow my guide. But my ambition, my focus, my attention is that I want to think of Krishna at the time of death. Most people are worried about where I'm going, what's going to happen. And because they're worried about where I'm going and what's going to happen, they are not focused on the present. That means their mind is not on Krishna. Or many of them think, oh, just see what happened. So their mind is either in the past or in the future, not in the present. And that's because of the mode of ignorance or the mode of passion and not of the mode of goodness. We want to cultivate the mode of goodness so that I can think of Krishna in the present moment. This is the most important thing. And therefore you find Krishna consciousness, every aspect and part of Krishna consciousness is designed, is there to allow us to cultivate our consciousness to become Krishnatized by remembering the pastimes, the glories, the name, form, qualities of Krishna. And especially at the time of death, we want to remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is our highest ambition. And therefore, for us to achieve this, we have to do this daily and regularly. Because practice will allow us to achieve perfection at the time of death. Even if I know this and I don't practice at the time of death, I will not be able to think of Krishna, because I will be conditioned to think of everything else. But if I focus my mind every single day and spend time trying to chant attentively and remembering Krishna, I am cultivating a habit which is going to save me at the time of death. So therefore, when we're chanting, we should be attentive. We should not have anything in front of us that's distracting. And we should not allow anything to cultivate that distraction. And with that aim in mind as the ambition, then we should also facilitate everything around our life to aid in that focus, in that goal. Our diet, our relationships, our thoughts throughout the day, our activities, all should be directed towards this ambition. And if I sincerely practice and do my best, and if it comes to that day when I cannot remember Krishna for whatever reason at the time of death, do not be concerned or alarmed. Krishna will remember you, because he is Bhaktavatsa. He is a lovable Lord. And he's eternally grateful. In fact, in Act of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada says, anyone who chants the name of Krishna even once, Krishna is eternally indebted to that person, and Krishna never forgets that person. So you put a little effort, and Krishna remembers. Imagine if you sincerely put all the effort and energy you have day in, day out, you will attract the attention of Krishna. And Krishna will aid. Srila Prabhupada will aid because you are following his instructions. The Acharya's blessings will be there. The devotee's mercy will be there. So we are blessed that Bhishmadev is revealing to us through his example how to focus, to have compassion on the devotees, at the same time when the time comes to direct one's attention on the most important personality, Krishna, especially at the time of death. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This brings us to the end of these beautiful verses. Next week, we're going to be covering verses 25 to 28. If there are any questions or comments, please share that in the chat. So next week, Sunday, we will possibly have a session in the maybe a little later afternoon. I'll just present an overview of Chaitanya Life Academy and some ways one can get involved. Right, Shamananda Prabhu says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thanks for sharing all these wonderful pastimes with us. Ultimately, we can say only by mercy do we ultimately, can we say only by mercy do we eventually accept Krishna and Vedas, etc., as authority? So technically, yes, but at the same time, it's not that my effort is not required and that I cannot inquire or clarify my doubts. So I should be open, and if I clarify my doubts, then that clarification of doubts helps me accept the Vedas. The challenge is people are too proud. They don't want to ask, they don't want to show their ignorance, they don't want to reveal that they got doubts. So therefore they don't clarify, they don't ask. And as they question, and you see, that's why Prabhupada always, after his class, he always made the system, any questions? I remember one of my students, they were Christians. So they were coming to my classes, 91, early 90s. And they told me that, when they would go to church and they would ask questions like, how does God look? What does he do in the spiritual world? They would get, the priest would blast them. Stop asking such questions. It's demonic to ask such questions. And they were thinking, gee, I just want to ask about God and you're telling me this is not good. But when they came to Krishna consciousness, they said, what do we like about, Krishna consciousness? That any questions? They love that. So if one is open to inquiring, asking questions, then that also allows them to expedite them accepting the authority of the Vedas. Because the mercy factor is already there. Prabhupada's mercy factor is already there. He wants everyone to accept. So no doubt mercy is definitely there. But it's also the individual's effort to clarify, to understand. That's why Prabhupada said we have to be thoughtful, independently thoughtful. It's not dogmatic. It's not that like people will accept or don't accept. No, it's a question of being thoughtful, inquiring, questioning, why, understanding, and then it's a logical consequence that one begins to understand. Wow, it's amazing. Because if you really analyze the system, how it's designed, how it's coming down, the knowledge, it makes logical sense. If you want to know about me, what's the best way? Ask me. If you know about God, what's the best way? Ask him. So Krishna is telling us. So it sounds logical. And because of that logic, then we say, yeah, it makes sense. And then we accept. So in this way, acceptance, removing doubts, mercy is definitely always the factor. It's always there. 12 marjans, are these fixed up? Is there a certain way they have been designated? So just like the 4 acharyas that disemanate or begin the main propounders of the 4 disciplic succession, that's cast in stone, that's designated. Similarly, in our line, these 12 marjans are designated. Now, in other lines, there may be other marjans. Just like in Rudra Sampradaya, Shri Sampradaya, there may be other Sampradayas, there are 4 Sampradayas. So in each Sampradaya, they are designated acharyas. But in our line, these are designated acharyas. Like Sri Mahaprabhu is designated, no, you can't change it. Prabhupada is designated, you can't change. It's got his position, it's Senapati, nobody can change that. So there's certain designated roles in acharyas. So in that sense, yes. But it doesn't mean that one cannot represent an acharya. We are representing Prabhupada, and he's representing other acharya, or the acharyas in our line. He's representing Narad Muni. He's delivering the message as is, that was delivered like these marjans. So Prabhupada is spreading the message of Bhishmadev, right? So he's perfectly representing the marjans. But yes, they are designated. Vasaraj Prabhu, Hare Krishna, thank you for your realizations. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Yamavati Radhika, absolutely beautiful class. Thank you for explaining so expertly. We're so grateful and inspired. Wish these classes would never end. What happens when one is in a coma? Can you explain about the consciousness? So Srila Prabhupada describes in one of his small books. So if a materialist go into a coma, then that means there was some indecision with his karma. So Chitragupta and Yamaraj are having a discussion. They're having a GBC meeting about his karma, what to do, what situation. So they're just clarifying. And then he continues. The soul continues. When a devotee goes into karma, when a devotee goes into coma, there may be different reasons. And Prabhupada doesn't go into details in terms of that, but we know that Krishna has his reasons. And those reasons may be different. So for example, when one devotee met in a car accident, head-on car collision, and I asked him, what happened when that collision, at that point of that collision, that accident, at that main point, at that time when the truck hit the car? He said, it hit, he was unconscious, he got up in hospital. So then I realized that Krishna is so kind. He's made the mechanism that if there's a collision, then the body goes into an unconscious state. So that, if there's some assaulting and whatever you're going to go through, you don't feel anything because you're unconscious. Then you get up, you're in hospital. So Krishna prevents you from all the pain and the trauma in that situation. And coma may be the similar situation. Krishna puts you in that situation so that you may not experience certain things. And then ultimately, as devotees, Prabhupada said, for the karmis, there's indecision. For devotees, it's Krishna's decision. Krishna has a reason, whatever the reason is happening. The one thing is very clear: externally, you in a coma, you are not conscious, but actually internally, you are fully conscious in terms of your practice of Krishna consciousness. So you're never unconscious. We are practicing to be Krishna consciousness. We are not practicing to be unconscious. And apparently in these situations when I'm unconscious, externally I'm conscious, but internally I'm very much awake and fully conscious of my relationship, and Krishna's there and Krishna's reciprocating. So someone may say, oh yeah, this devotee died in a coma, shame. No, there's no shame. That was perfectly arranged by Krishna, and Krishna knows exactly what he's doing. And we know exactly, Krishna knows exactly the best situation where the devotee is going to go. And for that devotee, Prabhupada's purport, the ambition was simply to remember Krishna. That's all. Our goal is not to decide where we're going to go, even how we're going to go. Our goal is simply, let me remember Krishna. Rasaraj Prabhu says, can a sadhaka go back to Godhead even if he did not reach the stage of Krishna Prem, stopped at a level of anartha nivriti, but trying to practice by chanting, reading, serving, etc.? So technically, no. You cannot go back to the spiritual world if you don't have love for Krishna, because then you're going to be a disturbance there. Just consider, you don't love Krishna, right? And that person who's dying loves Facebook. So now they go back to the spiritual. Krishna, where's the internet? Where's Facebook? This is the problem. And Krishna is going to say, there is no internet here. There's no Facebook here. And as soon as you think, where's internet and where's Facebook? You're back in the material world. So why would Krishna take you there to come back here? Because of Facebook. So yes, you can't go back to the spiritual without pure love of Krishna. There's no gate crashing, unfortunately. You can't buy your way, you can't cheat your way. You have to become a pure devotee of Krishna. Therefore, we have to be serious to become pure. Now, that being said, I may be practicing on anartha nivriti now. And I have a chronic cancer, 4th stage or 3rd stage cancer. And that cancer is killing me and eating my body up. And I'm on the deathbed in hospital. I could be in hospital for 1 day. And I could go in that 1 day from Anartha Nivritti to Bhava to Prem and leave. I could go from Anartha Nivritti to Prem in a moment, at a time of death, by Krishna's mercy, by Prabhupada's mercy. So in that way, to answer your question, could be yes. Because remember, we seeing someone, oh, he's at Anartha Nivritti, I'm at Anartha Nivritti. You have no clue what Krishna will do at a time of death. Krishna can squeeze billions of lifetimes into 10 seconds, into 1 second, into nanoseconds. This is Krishna. That's why we don't judge how you're living your life. It's how you die. And nobody knows how you're dying because it's all internal. You know, some people say, oh yes, he died so peacefully, he died in his sleep. You don't know if he had a nightmare. You don't know what he was thinking about in his sleep. So you can't say died peacefully. And somebody may be in a gross accident and you say shame, but you have no clue about his consciousness. He could be perfectly Krishna conscious. He's loving that situation like anything because he's fully Krishna conscious. He's getting Krishna's embrace. So the external does not dictate the destination. It's the internal that dictates the destination. And we don't know the internal, only Krishna knows the internal. It's between you and Krishna. And Krishna can do anything. It's a sincerity and Krishna can empower. So yes, it's up to Krishna and you to go back to the spiritual world, ultimately, but you have to become pure. There's no question about that. Krishna can facilitate that purity very effectively, very quickly, mercifully. Prabhupada can just bless. He rendered, like for example, Prabhupada said, anyone who gives their life every day going out on books, serving the Sankirtan mission, they will go back to God at this very lifetime. Prabhupada gives that guarantee. Prabhupada told one devotee, you keep cooking these kachoris for Radhasham Sundar, till you leave, you're going back to Godhead. So many devotees Prabhupada gave like that statements. And for those who are rendering service to Srila Prabhupada's mission, we should have firm faith that Prabhupada's mercy is upon us. At the time of death, Prabhupada will never be ungrateful. He'll be there to help us. Prabhupada also gave us the 75% mark. So many benefits are there. So even if somebody's on Anartha Nivritti, if they 75% progress in Krishna consciousness, they're going back to Godhead by Prabhupada's mercy. So it's possible. Jagannath Priya Prabhu, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for today's most transcendental class. Thank you very much, Jagannath Charan Priya Prabhu. Mother Les says, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for Krishna Katha. What a spiritual potent class. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All blessings to all the devotees. And thank you for your feedback. It is only by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Bhishmadev. Shama says, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Can you elaborate on the external energy of the Lord? So the external energy, as we mentioned, is Krishna's external energy, Maya. And we covered many areas in the first few chapters of the first canto, where Vyasadeva is seeing Krishna and the external energy. We covered there, so you can read that section. But yes, the external energy, Maya, is there. She is Durga, expansion of Radhavani. She's in charge of this material creation. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Devi Asaguna Maya, Mama Maya Duratya. This divine energy of mind consists of 3 modes of material nature. And we are all under Maya, controlled by her energy, or controlled by the energy of Krishna. is Anubhav experience when one is at Krishna Prem level. So in the context that Prabhupada was talking about, Anubhav was more in terms of the different relationship that one can have with Krishna. And yes, this is generally at a very high level, Bhava stage. One is progressing towards that and becoming purified. And then when the heart is purified, then only one develops that mellow, that relationship with Krishna. Namoti Radhika, thanks for the answer, Prabhu. Very helpful. Thank you. Ufana Prabhu, Krishna is so nice. He incarnates differently for his desires. That's independent of any influence or anyone. Like no one can do or be equal to him. I love Krishna for that. I'm free to relate to him as he is independent and I can fully trust him. Oh, Krishna is really romantic. Very beautiful. Yes, wonderful. And here's the thing. If he's so beautiful and so romantic and so wonderful at this stage, then Bafana Prabhu, you have no clue, even I have no clue of how wonderful Krishna is going to become more and more to you as you progress with that consciousness. Consider when Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met, they embraced and fainted. Just think of that. Someone you love, like husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, friends, they meet, they come together. They may be attracted to each other, but never you find, boyfriend, girlfriend hug each other and faint. But here you find Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, they come and they faint. It's like they get spiritually, emotionally electrocuted because of the loving emotion of knowing each other, hugging each other. Consider that when we meet in Krishna, we'll faint. That's how powerful that relationship will become. So yes, we want to intensify that relationship. We want to desire that relationship. And as long as we desire it, we're praying for it, we're begging for it. We're going on our knees and praying to Krishna, please, please reveal yourself to me. And please pray for me. Please pray for us that we may also develop that similar sentiments of loving Krishna, falling in love with Krishna. This is what it means, falling in love with Krishna. People blindly fall in love with people of this world that have a body made of bag of bile, pus, stool, mucus, urine. So what's the excuse to fall in love with someone who has a spiritual body, who has 64 amazing, inconceivable qualities out of the unlimited qualities that he has, of someone whose heart is so golden, so compassionate, so kind, that he's willing to take birth in every species to shower his mercy. That person who is your best friend, who is appearing with you in every species that you may go as the super soul, waiting for you to turn towards him. So this person is such an amazing person. Why wouldn't anyone fall in love with Krishna? And why wouldn't they? Because they are covered by the material energy. And the material energy, that which is not, keeps us separated from Krishna. And by the mercy of the spiritual master, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, the devotees, the Bhagavatam, we are associating with them, getting purified, and we are becoming free from the clutches of Maya, so that we can see the clouds of ignorance can be dissipated, the clouds of anartha can be dissipated, so we can see the beautiful sun of the lotus face of Krishna. And in this way, fall in love again with Krishna. Thank you very much for everyone's association, feedback, questions, comments. Now we will continue next week with verses 25 to 28. Kvantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Go Pramanande Hari Hari Bo.